Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, speaking of hypocrisy, this point right over here, this is the height of left-wing hypocrisy. For years and arguably decades, the Democrats have always virtue signaled on the issue of political extremism and violence. They're always talking about the white supremacist terror threat in the nation that I'm still looking for. You know, I'm still actively out here with my binoculars freaking looking for it. But I think the reality is this white supremacist threat is like two guys in a forest in Alabama with a 24-pack of beer. It's not this widespread phenomenon across the country that's putting black and brown people in danger across the nation. It's just not happening. But you'll hear the left crying about it constantly, you know. You'll always hear them invoke January 6th, right? Until they're blue in the freaking face. They're always talking about incitement to violence. You making a joke online is incitement. Donald Trump making very benign, fact-based political statements is incitement to violence, always against people he's criticizing. You know, they're always talking about this stuff, but the moment actual political violence erupts, brutal, bloody, real life-threatening violence from their own side, these same virtue signalers are silent. And well, guess what? It happened again. We got a sitting city councilman in Danville, Virginia, a man by the name of Lee Vogler, who was just, I'm struggling to even say this because it's so freaking surreal, he was just lit on fire in what seems to be likely another example of left-wing terrorism. It's becoming increasingly harder and harder to deny that left-wing political violence is real, it is escalating, and it's clearly being fueled by the rhetoric of the very people who pretend to care about this kind of thing. You know, these hypocritical, delusional Democrats. Of course, let me show you guys exactly what's going on. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so here's a little bit of a TLDR. Take a look.
It's in Southern Virginia, we're getting word of a horrific attack. A city council member was set on fire inside of his office. Where a local am I reading this right?
So yeah, he works at a local magazine.
Yeah, he's at a local magazine. That's the office where this happened. Mm-hmm. Okay. And where he works. The 38-year-old Lee Vogler is a city councilman in Danville, Virginia, 2 hours south of Roanoke. Police say the suspect entered into the victim's office and then doused him with flammable liquid. The victim and the suspect then exited the building, where the suspect then set the victim on fire. Just horrific details we're learning. And right now, the extent of Vogler's injuries are unknown, and the suspect is in custody. Trace, it looks like the first phone calls came into police around 11:30 a.m., and they were dispatched to the scene there and told of a male set on fire. He's been airlifted to a regional medical facility for treatment. And the full extent of his injuries is still not known at this time. Just awful.
We'll have a full follow-up on that. Fox News at night.
So we've got Lee Vogler, who's a Republican Danville city councilman, and apparently some schizoid decided to walk in his office, pour gasoline on him, and then lit him ablaze. It seems he survived the attack, but he's recovering in hospital with some pretty serious burns. And I gotta tell you, for such an egregious story, I'm not noticing a lot of media noise. I'm sitting here wondering, where's the media frenzy? Where's the 24/7 CNN coverage? Oh, right, doesn't exist because it doesn't fit the freaking narrative. Let me tell you, and we all know this to be true, if Vogler was a Democrat and the attacker was a white male, we know exactly what would be happening right now. But because the victim is a Republican, well, it seems they're hell-bent on memory-holing this story within 48 hours. Well, you know who won't do that? Me. I'm like the crazy guy who's yelling into the freaking megaphone, hoping that people will listen, will heed my warning. It's time to freaking snap out of it. It's time to wake up. It's another one of these stories to add to the list. Remember Luigi Mangione? What about the 2 attempted assassinations on President Trump during the election season? Oh, is that not enough? Let's go back to the attempted assassination of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, shall we? Another leftoid schizoid who showed up at his home with a gun, zip ties, duct tape, an individual who even admitted that he was there to take Brett Kavanaugh's life because of Roe v. Wade. What about the 2017 shooting of Republican Congressman Steve Scalise? What about the trans mass shooters that we've seen? seen radicalized by left-wing ideology, or the innocent Patriot Prayer member who was murdered in Portland in 2020 by Mr. 100% Antifa Michael Reynolds, you've got to be blind to not see the pattern here. There's all this talks about right-wing violence. Joe Biden told us that white MAGA extremism was the greatest threat to the homeland. The FBI told us that white supremacist groups are the biggest threat in America. But where are those cases? Where? Frickin' where? Seriously. They don't seem to exist. I think we've had one example that was loosely connected to radical far-right ideology. Meanwhile, on the other side, I think it's becoming increasingly obvious to most people with eyeballs that left-wing violence is no longer a rare occurrence. It's more of a regular, almost quarterly occurrence. It's rising. There's an obvious problem on the left. And I'll tell you what the issue is. The problem is at the cross-section between extreme left-wing rhetoric and the mental health issues on the left. And I know, it's a shocking statement, right? What do you mean? What are you saying? That all left-wingers are mentally ill? No, I'm not saying that all, but I am saying that there is a mental health crisis within the world of left-wing politics. And don't take my word for it. Look at the studies. This is from Pew Research in 2020. Has a doctor or healthcare provider ever told you that you have a mental health condition? Over 30% of young Gen Z liberal men and over 50% of young liberal Gen Z women responded by saying yes. 30 and 50% of the younger age demographics. There's obviously an issue with mental health, and then you've got these grifter left-wingers who are constantly throwing around terms like genocide and fascism and authoritarianism that are constantly saying we need to fight back, bash the fash. Violence is justified, it's our resistance. There is a serious mental illness crisis that is festering in left-wing circles. People who identify as liberal are much more likely to report depression, anxiety, personality disorders, suicidal ideation, gender dysphoria, you name it. And so you've got this segment of people that are now being pumped with this emotionally destabilizing propaganda. The world is ending. Everyone's coming to get you. Violence is justified. Rise up against the fascism. Would you have done nothing in 1940s Germany when Hitler was coming to rise? And we're going to sit here and scratch our heads and act confused as we're seeing more and more examples of deranged leftists committing arson, assassinations or attempted assassinations, bomb threats. I mean, come on. We are seeing a mental health crisis in the country and then a political party that engages in the most extreme hyperbolic rhetoric imaginable. In other words, the Democrats are cultivating a poisonous crop. The left has essentially become a breeding ground for mentally unstable extremists, and clearly these left-wing leaders either don't care or are too cowardly to say anything about it. And worst at fault, honestly, is the media, because if the media actually did their job and held the Democrats accountable for this kind of thing, if they actually put the spotlight on these issues, just like they do dishonestly as they attempt to manufacture scandal surrounding President Trump, well then we wouldn't have this issue. The modern left, the Democrat Party, wouldn't get away with it. Left-wing domestic extremism is a real problem, and we simply have to keep identifying it. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.